Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to another episode of Inside the Firm. This is your Monday morning edition. I am your host, Alex Gore. I am here with Jeremy Zick, who is the CEO of WeCollabify. This is a support network of architectural talent that provides staff to your team from our nearshore garden of talent. We help right-size your firm's profit margin with our placement by providing you access to skilled, cost-effective talent that is excited by the opportunities of working with US-based architecture companies. Welcome inside the firm. How's it going, Jeremy?
Hi, it's very nice meeting you. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. First, you graduated from CU Boulder, where I teach in the architectural engineering department, not in the environmental design department. So tell us about your road that's from where, college to now being the CEO of this.
Okay, yeah, interesting. I studied at Colorado Boulder. It was a lot of fun in that environmental design program, which there was lots of studios, and it was a fun 4-year program. So a lot of my peers, after the 4 years, they would have gone on to get a master's in architecture and then go down the path of licensure and working with a firm and everything else. I left university around 2006. I did some work here and there, and by the time I was getting serious about pursuing my career, it was 2008. So in 2008, it was a very difficult time to find architecture-oriented work in the United States as the housing bubble imploded. And so I was just looking for new opportunities, and it just happened to be the case at that time that I decided to travel, do a little travel. We took a road trip down through Central America, ended up in Medellin, Colombia. In Colombia, it was a boom cycle. So while the US housing was kind of imploding, the city was really growing. And for me, that was really quite fascinating because I came from a place where it was really difficult to find work, and I ended up and landed in a place where work and opportunity was everywhere and everything was growing and it was really kind of exciting. So I started looking into ways that I could apply my knowledge in architecture and the construction industries, because I had done a lot of hands-on work in construction at that point. So I started getting involved with some real estate people. And what we did ultimately is we grew this small real estate company. It started as real estate sales, and then I incorporated let's do architectural design for apartments that we're selling and then do some new construction houses. And then we grew that up and said, hey, let's do some packaged investment deals and let's add a hospitality component. And so 10 years later, I was the president of a company called Life Afar, and that company did pre-packaged investment deals for foreigners, a lot of foreigners who were interested in investing in the real estate market in Colombia. So we were in 5 cities, 3 countries, essentially, by the time I left that opportunity, and decided to come back to the States. And so then I looked up an architecture firm. I was interested at that point. I was coming in to try and buy an architecture firm. Basically, my idea was, and I do think this is the case, there's a lot of architects who are aging and they're interested in moving on from the firms. They need to. They're getting to an age where it's no longer, they don't have the energy or desire to continue working, but many of them have not set up their firms for operating without them. And so I got hooked up with an architecture firm through a sales listing in Austin, Texas, and they were interested in collaborating. And so we came together. I came in as the CEO of that firm, and then we engineered and did a lot of business work to grow that firm from a relatively small, I think there were 7 designers at the time when I arrived. Now there's more than 35, and we kind of turned that company around, really scaled it up and got it moving in the right direction. And that particular owner is now very excited to be owning and running that company. So during that process, I spun off and created the WeCollabify, because it is a component and a strategy for the integration. When I was CEO of that firm, we took a lot of the context that I already knew. They were in Colombia, South America, They were good architects, good designers, people that I had worked with in the past. And we started incorporating them with this kind of one-on-one remote policy where people would be 100% full-time assigned to the team, and then they'd have a project manager. And so they'd be doing this very real-time live collaboration with the architects in Austin. And that functioned really well. That model worked really well. And then me as a business person, ultimately decided that I thought I could have a lot more impact on the architectural industry through enabling and empowering other architects to do better and focus more on architecture by helping them with the staffing and to ease the pressure by reducing some of the costs and overhead that are associated with the production of the architecture. So that's ultimately what led me to where I am today.
That's awesome. Before we get into that, making your firm efficient, this sounds amazing. What did you do when you worked with that architecture firm and became the CEO to grow the actual businesses? What were some of the principles or steps that you saw?
So the growth that we engineered, for one, I chose Austin, which was a growing market. And I will say we got lucky that post-COVID, things opened up and there was a lot of interest. So first thing, and this is hard to plan, but right place, right time. It was a good time to be doing business. So that helped. But what we had done during the COVID is all kinds of SEO and ranking. So I came to this firm. They had beautiful projects. They really were like stunning. But if you were looking up trying to find an architect in Austin, you will never find them through like SEO or by looking on the internet. You would have to go and know about them or know somebody who knows them to be able to find them. And so we spent a lot of time with my resources in Colombia because I had run a very large business, or for me it was very large. It was 110 people, and so I knew a lot of different people that I could pull from to do a lot of different things. So we worked in collaboration with a member of my team to get the SEO up, to get them ranking, get them going on the first page. And in a market like Austin, I learned a few things. It was really good for new developers to that area. So if a new developer or a new person was moving into that area, they were probably going to be looking up for architects online, Googling it up. But if people were existing developers or if they were existing residents of Austin, they probably already knew through channels where they were going to go. So I learned that, okay, SEO is really good for newcomers to the market, but it's not so good for an existing market. And so one thing that I learned through all that is the existing relationships, and doubling down on those existing relationships was equally as important as getting that SEO really dialed in so that you could be searchable to kind of people who are new to your market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a great idea. Could you talk about this one-on-one kind of relationship? Would you literally just partner a US based architect or project manager, and did you find that the best way to do it is that they basically have someone working with them overseas, and maybe talk about, do people listen to that advice or do they not listen to that advice? What's the kind of best way to kind of start this collaboration?
So the one-on-one is a great place to start, and I think it's really one of the strengths of this situation where I'm going to take a step backwards and then come to that. But I think there's a misnomer in a general sense that, okay, if I'm outsourcing, I'm going to send something out and, a CD set, or depending on the phase of the drawing you're in, send whatever it is out, and then I'm going to get it back in 2 weeks. It's going to be perfect. It's gonna be done. Move. Okay. Guess what? Never happens. Like, you send it out, you set up your client meeting, it comes back, it's not what you expected at all in some way or another. Then you have to push your client meeting and then go through this like back and forth correction process. So that's like, for me, that's architects using outsourcing in a way that's really not set up or designed for architects, and the collaboration that's needed in order to really do good architecture. If you're super streamlined in your process, that will work and does work, and there's lots of people who do it. But if you're not so perfectly dialed in your process, or you don't know exactly what you're looking for and don't have like 10 guides on exactly how to achieve that, which many architecture firms just don't have time to have, or it's a new project to them and so they haven't yet created it, it just doesn't work all that well. So we set out and pioneered that one-on-one approach that you're talking about, where we would take, like this farm, I'll give you a good example. They had 6 staff designers with different levels of experience. Some were more kind of like, let's just say 10 years in their career. Some were 2 to 3 years in their career. But all of them had some experience. And so what we did was we would put one of those, we'll say a 2 to 3 year experienced person who's learning themselves, of course, because you are constantly learning throughout your architecture career, but they're learning. But then we paired them with somebody which was like a production kind of assistant. So in the software, and that could be Revit, it could be ArchiCAD, it could be any of the softwares that a firm might use. There's just a lot of modeling hours involved to get these models to where they need to be for the various different phases of the project cycle. And so by collaborating one-on-one, when we created those pairs, 2 things happened. One, on the US side, those people started learning management and delegation skills they did not have prior to this. And that is not an easy transition for anybody. It's a slow and difficult transition to learn how to organize your project and then delegate and then review. But they learned really quickly. And, just 1 year later, now we're 3 years later, but just 1 year later, they were now able to manage quite well. And they had early in their career learned these very important skills, in my opinion, to architects in this day and age, which was, this is how I'm going to delegate, this is how I'm going to manage. And by the way, through the redlining process of working with this person one-on-one, I'm learning a lot too, because when you're teaching, you're also fortifying your own knowledge and then seeking out additional knowledge from your managers as you move forward. So on the offshore side, because we do same time zone, and that's all set up because of we really believe in the collaboration component of the architecture. So in the same time zone, you can be real time on the phone all the time. There's no concerns or worries about, are they available? Are they sleeping? What's going on? So while they're real time throughout the day, they're working consistently on this one-on-one basis where there's red lines, they're going back and forth. The person that was assigned to them usually has less experience, like they're very good at modeling, but maybe they're relatively inexperienced or early in their careers from an overall knowledge of architecture perspective. So there's this kind of steady back and forth that occurs through the sort of redlining process or daily meetings or task kind of follow-up lists and on how things are going. And so that ended up working really, really well for both sides because they're both learning a lot during this process. And after the initial learning curve of, okay, now I have to delegate instead of just produce, we started getting really great results and like really great commitment as well. It started to get more exciting for the people who are in the US because now they were in charge of things and doing a good job too.
Yeah. Could you, I mean, you said it, but I just want to kind of pause and reflect on a key differentiator. And you said the same time zone, where I think people mainly falsely think that you send it off at night, you get it in the morning, and you touch base maybe in a morning meeting or an afternoon meeting, something like that. So this time zone thing, are people switching their time zone from when they're working, or are they mainly South America where they just line up vertically in the time zone or close enough that they can, move their work schedule an hour or two to line up with the US base?
Right. So it's South America. So we're soliciting a lot of talent in South America. And then they'll just adjust to the time zone because there's a few time zones that are covered, but it's very easy for them to adjust 1-2 hours to match the time zone of the US. And then it's fairly free in terms of they can work when they want. And we ask them to align themselves to the firm, but maybe somebody wants to work late because that works for them, or maybe somebody else wants to work early because that works for them. But as long as they're communicating with the firm and the firm is getting what they need, they in the real-time collaboration, they're within an hour or two of each other. I guess sometimes 3, depending on West Coast, East Coast, and exactly where in South America. But that's very easy for them to just match the time zones.
Yeah, no, I love that. What do you think are some essential first steps a firm would need to take in order to prepare themselves for doing an offshoring?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. There's sort of, I'm going to call it two different models of offshoring. The one, and I'm going to start with the one that's more traditional, or more people just assume that it's this way, where we're going to send it to India or Philippines, and it's going to come back. You have to do a lot more initial preparation work to be able to be clear, so that people can generally be running for a period of time without interaction from the team. But with the model that I work on, a lot of it is getting the technology set up. So there's a couple questions from a security perspective. For example, I've had some clients that have government related work, and their government related work is controlled from a security perspective by certain mandates. And so understanding what those controls are helps determine how you're going to set up. So for example, if it's really controlled and you have to be compliant with the government security protocols, then a virtual machine. So the first thing you would do is set up a virtual machine, and it's important to control the entire environment where any work is ever going to be done, so that it's never actually on the physical computer elsewhere. And that's just an important security protocol for certain government projects, not all of them, but some of them. So that's on one end of the scale. The other end of the scale, which is more common, is they're not doing government work, or they don't have these mandates. And so they will either, depending on how their office is set up, if they have an internal server, they'll just get access to that internal server and say, okay, here's where you need to get files, and they'll allocate, okay, these are the files that can be accessed by the remote talent, and it hosts all the project files. So that's on the other end. And then in our preferred case, right in the middle, if the firm is on the cloud-based version of the platform they're on, like in Revit, I think it's Revit 360, but it's ArchiCAD, I think it's called BIM Cloud. But if they're on those cloud-based programs, then setting that up and getting access to those is super critical. And of course, it's the most recommended. It's the most efficient way to work, whether you're in the office or you're dialing in with remote. You get more control, and it's a lot easier, and you're not dealing with lots of different versions of the same file with different iterations, because it's all built in and manipulated right there, kind of in the cloud. So we'll go and we'll actually recommend, like, okay, you guys are not on the cloud yet. Have you thought about that? Because we recommend this not just for remote, but really for the whole operation. There's a cost, but all day long, it's going to save you time. It seems expensive if there's a price tag for that BIM 360, and it seems like you might be saving a couple $100 a month if you're not doing it. But in most cases that I've seen, you're spending more than that on the wasted time that the talent is dealing with these files and downloading and uploading and all these different things. So those are a couple of the initial things, like get the tools, understand your security, and then just get them dialed in. And then setting up the communication is the other real fundamental one. And so how does your office communicate? And the way we do it is we have like good ideas and protocols, but it's a lot easier to integrate with what the firm's already doing than try and recommend a new communication protocol. So whatever the firm's doing, they might be on, Basecamp, they might be on Asana, they might be communicating through email, they might be a telephone call communicators. So whatever means of communication that are being deployed within that office, we're going to plug into those. And if their only means of communication is in the open studio, just chatting back and forth to each other, then we introduce like either Google or Teams or some sort of communication platform so that they can communicate. But for us, like dialing in that communication is critical, because we want the remote staff to be a part of the team. And in order to be a part of the team, they have to be very quick and easy to communicate with. And that's where the big value gets added. So we just basically, in a nutshell, figure out how you're communicating, and we match to the way that the firm's doing it.
Yeah, I think it's awesome too that you have an architecture background, and then you're serving this, because even those little things about BIM 360 and stuff like that, and advising your clients in that way, where other companies might not even advise their client that way. They'll just say it's oh, it's up to you to however you're going to do it. Is there any other throughout the years, any other kind of pitfalls or negative things that you've seen, or funny stories where you're like, oh, don't do that, do this. This is a way to kind of lead yourself to, long-term success.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things is, and we talked about already, the time zone thing, setting expectations, and with that time zone too. So if you are, let's just say you are outsourcing in a different time zone, one of the big pitfalls is going to be assuming everything's going to go well, is going to come back nicely. And
Yeah.
that, to me, that is really important to understand, that the different talent that might be working on a project are at different stages in their career. And you need to align your expectation with the level of talent that is working on your project at that time. And so depending on who you've engaged or what level of talent you've said, hey, I need a quality control expert, or I need a modeler, they're going to be at a level between point A and B in their career. So it's really, really, really helpful to understand where that is, so that you can match the way you manage this to where they are in their careers. And it's just like in the office. I mean, it really is just like taking on a new staff member of the office. You need to understand where they're at. And then if they're pretty earlier in their career, you're going to be teaching them quite a bit more. And if they're later in their career, you're not going to be doing it as much. So one of the big pitfalls that I've seen is people are always assume, okay, I'm outsourcing, they've got that sorted, it's going to be perfect. So I have the expectation that I'm going to send this, it's going to get modeled, and it's going to come back and it's going to be good. And there's like it's important to remember too, that if you think of a firm or think of the way your firm is structured, most people who are listening will probably understand and resonate with this, but modeling happens at the cheaper level in terms of earlier in their career. So it's less expensive, but it takes a lot of time. As you gain experience, it's probable that you're really not going to be modeling all that much. You'll be managing others who are modeling, or you'll be managing more of the client relationships, or you'll be, managing the budget and the schedule and making sure that the people who are modeling are doing it well. But almost always the people who are modeling are significantly less experienced than the people who are managing them, because as they got really great at modeling, they moved into management. And that's just the natural progression of anybody career wise. And so when you're sending out drawings, getting a CD set, just remembering that frequently the people who are going to be working on that set are just less experienced than you are as a manager who's asking or requesting or requiring this type of work. And so once you align that expectation and start to understand the level of kind of back and forth that might be required, again, based on the level of skill that the person has that you're working with, is really helpful. Because we had some growing pains with that. We'll call it the case study for that Austin firm, but early on there was that there was that assumption, and then we took on new managing principles during that course, and each one just came to the table assuming that all the staff was going to be just like great. And so then they were evaluating, how's this going, not on how's it going with the skill level of the staff that we've decided we needed for this particular task, but how is it going in general. And they said, wow, we're doing a lot of redlining, for example. And so we worked hard to reduce the redlining needs, of course, but part of it was setting the expectation. And once we got those managing principles up to speed with, yeah, okay, this is really just like a normal studio. And the big benefit that you're getting here is you are teaching, but you get compounding gains on that, where in a traditional outsourcing, you're kind of sending it out, and then there's some mistakes that come back. You do this big scramble to try and get everything right. And then the next time you have a project, new people are assigned to it. And so now you're going to do that all over again. And you're not building on the knowledge that you've transferred from the first time, the second time, the third time. And so that's another pitfall. And I'll just highlight that always in architecture, for me, as a firm, the biggest hole in the boat of the architect is losing knowledge or spending time training somebody that then doesn't get to be used to the benefit of the firm over a long term. So don't get yourself into a situation where you're going to be training and doing all this redline stuff, but then you can't gain on that the next time, where the person that you've done that with is on the project still or on the next project with you, and can now do those things without needing that training, or that kind of level of back and forth.
Yeah, it makes complete sense, but sometimes it's hard because people are under the gun and under the pressure, and every time you hire someone, and I'm not just saying outsourcing, insourcing, they say their level skill is at like a 7 or 8 and maybe even a 9, and you're like, you're at like a 4.
Yeah.
And two, then to just have the self-realization that they're not going to model things the way that you do because they're not you, because they are in another country or just grown up. So like you need to take that time to train and teach them. And if you have that expectation, then it could go a lot smoother. So I totally agree with that. If people are interested in this, could you kind of just lay out how what do you offer in the sense of, is it full 40 hours? Is it 20 hours? Is it Monday through, Friday? What is the kind of price structure, relative for that? How should they think about how much time they need to either buy and how much that might cost?
Got it. Understood. So with us and the way that we're structured is we push the full time. And so what we do is we say there's a 40-hour minimum. Occasionally a client or a talent member will say, hey, I really can only do 20, and then we'll set that up. But the reason we push for 40 is it's way better for the longevity of the talent. If you're doing less than 40, then you run the risk of them having multiple jobs and one of them pulling them away eventually. And everything we do is for the longevity, because with longevity becomes those compounding gains of, wow, this person, kind of starts, this person can do what I need them to do. That's great. And then it's like, oh, now they can do what I need them to do in my language. That's even better. And now they're like, oh, this is an expert and they know. And as they get to that phase, they can then teach new people as well. So people over a long period of time will start by getting production work, but they're going to end by getting people who can teach also. And so now they're pushing more like activities that are time consuming to a more cost-effective environment. So that's why we always push in the long term, and that 40-hour minimum for us is all about that. Like we want a 40-hour a week commitment so that the talent can be 100% committed to that firm, and that's everything that they're doing. And then the firm can rely on them 100%. So that's the way we go in and structure it. And then we have done a lot of work in the role stratification. We do a lot of filtration work too, to try and understand, okay, what are your needs? Do you need a younger, earlier career person who's really going to be deep in the models? Or do you need, architect level 3? And we've tied it to the AIA conventional. So we offer an emerging architect, we offer architectural staff level 1, level 2, level 3. And then we have another role that we call project management support. As a remote component, you cannot do every component and be a complete project manager. You're not going to be able to go on site and do a site visit. So there's a couple things that you can't do, but you can run the budget, you can run the schedule, you can communicate and facilitate communications with clients, with engineers, with all the different stakeholders in the project. So there's a lot of value add that can be added, but you can't be doing everything. So those are the different things. We also offer like business services, where we do administration work, we do HR work, we do all kinds of different things within the business of architecture to also help them. But we also do BIM management, and this is one that's exciting. And to go back to what you had earlier said, is that we get eyes immediately on whether we think a firm is well organized or whether they need a lot of additional help to organize their use of the tools. And when I say BIM management, what I'm really talking about is how are you guys using the tools? Is the level of design that you're doing too intense for the stage and what you're ultimately communicating, or not intense enough? And are the people who are doing the modeling really good at using the software, or maybe not up to speed with all the new tools and tricks that the software has? Do you have a details library? How well is it connected? How easily accessible is it? So we'll get a very early insight with our BIM manager, and we'll send them in and we'll do an audit, and then we'll report to them and say, hey, we think we can be doing better together if we do these various different things. So that's kind of that's how it goes. But I got a little sidetracked with the different roles. So those
Yep.
are all the different roles that we offer. And then we have different pricing structures for each of those roles. So the earlier in their career, the less costly, and the later in their career, the more that price kind of goes up. But we do it on an hourly basis, and it starts at 22 for an emerging architect on an hourly basis, and it goes up to 40 for an architectural staff level 3. And because I ran the finances in the architectural company, and I was up to speed with all the indicators and all the things, what we're really looking for in our pricing model was making sure that they could get like a 3.5x on their billing. So if they're costing 22 an hour, we're recommending that they're getting billed at least 3.5 times that if it's an hourly basis firm.
Sure.
And if it's a fixed fee firm, then they should calculate it at an hourly, but they should be getting a profit at least 3.5 times. And we're really shooting for 3.5 to 4.5, trying to push up to 4.5, because at 4.5%, you're wildly outpacing what you otherwise normally could do from that multiplier on a local staff. And generally, it's going to be about half the cost if you take in all of the like the benefits and the payments and the vacations and the this and the that. You're going to be paying about half as much with this as you would otherwise be paying for taking on a staff member. And this has been really interesting. I did not anticipate this at all, but we've had like one of our companies grew from a very small team to like 35 plus, and they've been able to manage that whole team in a pretty small office space, because about 12 of those members are in Austin, and then all the rest are remote. So their office footprint is like less than half from a rent perspective. So in that particular case, they're saving probably $10,000 a month in just office space costs that they would have had to have to rent the space to be able to host those 35 people. And I've had other architecture firms, like I had one, it was really interesting in Pittsburgh, and they were saying, we just moved into our new office. We're growing so fast that we're already at capacity. And for us, because we're at capacity in our brand new office that we just moved into, we're looking to take on remote staff because we don't want to move out of our office, and we don't want to expand our footprint any further from right now. So they were looking at the remote staff as a strategy to not expand their office footprint. And those are some, intangibles that when people are thinking about, okay, should I do remote? Should I not do remote? That it's easy to not think of. I never thought of it at first until it started to be like, wow, well, what would it cost me to have an office that can host 35 people versus 12 people, 15 people. So
Yep. Absolutely. That's awesome. Thank you for all the information. I really appreciating it. Very fascinating stuff. If I'll leave this, let us know if anyone wants to contact you or reach out to your firm. Where's the best place to go? And any sort of parting piece of advice or thought that we didn't touch on, the floor is yours.
Okay, nice. So the website is WeCollabify. That's with 2 L's. So WeCollabify.com. And on there, you can find us and access us. And there's any information that you might have on the team. And then in terms of any kind of closing final thoughts, I guess, I just really think, as the business owner on the architectural side, that, and I'll talk a little bit about the whole big scale of things, but whether we like it or not, as architects, the service industry is absolutely being outsourced right now all around us, not just in architecture, but in accounting and logistics and everything else. So the people who are in the field of architecture today have a fundamentally different relationship and are going to have a different career trajectory than the people who are 60 in their careers right now, because what we're going to have to do in the United States is become leaders, become delegators, become managers, because a lot of people are going to be overseas, and they're going to be doing a lot of the production level work and assisting in the architecture. And whether we like it or not, that is happening, and there's a big movement towards that. So I think it's really important to foster a plan where your own team is starting to become leaders. They're challenging and become, exercising those muscles early on in their career on the delegation, the management. And so setting up a model like this is really setting up the firm for long-term future success, because what is happening is there's a lot of other firms around who are doing the outsourcing, and they're able to do it a lot more cost effectively. And as that occurs, those margins are going to get squeezed, and the companies who aren't doing some sort of outsourcing, it's just going to be harder for them to continue to do business. And I think they're going to have to make up for it by working a lot of extra long hours. And we know that's a problem in architecture to start with. I think without some strategic adjustment, it's going to get worse. So I really strongly believe that this is a really great thing and a model for empowering the architects who are here in the States, who are going to have a different relationship with their industry than the people who are mentoring them right now.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Take care.